Right then guys, so we have something very different today. Have you ever had a tactic that you have really been struggling to try and make work? Well, today I've called in one of the most poignant tactical minds in the Football Manager community in 𝘼𝙗𝙗𝙪 to try and help me make this tactic better. So first of all, welcome onto the channel, 𝘼𝙗𝙗𝙪. Styc, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for this opportunity. Poignant is a interesting choice of words. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like, to be honest, when I think, like, tactics and stuff like that, you have the guys who do stuff on YouTube, so obviously I have 𝘼𝙗𝙗𝙪, who is that guy for me. Obviously, you've got RDF, you've got Stinger, people like that, but very much in the draft scene, I'd say you're right at the top of names that I personally don't want to come up against, you know, because you come up with very interesting shapes that you don't necessarily see all the time. You've got these really good tactics. You're the assistant manager for lots of people, regardless of whether or not they listen to you. So yeah, you're very much one of the tactical minds that I very much would like to avoid. I think it's yourself and SNG are very much names that I would very much not want to play in draft competitions. So the idea and the concept of today's video, guys, I have a tactic which you will be able to see on screen now, which I was working on, but I couldn't get to work properly and be as effective as I would have liked. It is a one centre-back formation. I just was trying something absolutely silly, and obviously we do have the two strikers up top, so I couldn't make this work. So I set Styc the challenge of making this tactic better, with the two stipulations of the fact that it needed to remain just having one centre-back, and it needed to keep the two strikers up top. So the first thing you did, I believe, is tested the original on your Tactic Tester League. So do you want to tell the people about that?
Yeah, so the Tactic Tester League is something that I started out with Bustanet and SNG, and Coinbird, who used to stream and blog about FM as well, and I think still has the highest ever PvP ELO ranking in the draft rankings ever.
He does. He still does. Yeah. He just needs to play again, and he'll come back in at #1.
Yeah, he's a good friend, and all four of us worked for a long time on this, and it kind of was born out of frustrations with FM Base and FM Arena's methodologies. Like, we just don't love their database and didn't feel like it was giving a great test to some of the tactics we know are really good. So we just started talking in a group message, and built this testing database. So it has 4 leagues. And each league Napoli has been placed into. So it's 4 10-team leagues. They play each other 4 times, so it's 36 matches. And in one of the leagues, like, Napoli is the best team. In one of the leagues, all the teams have the same average current ability. In one of the leagues, it's just like a regular league. Like, there are some good teams, some bad teams, some mid-table teams. Like, that's meant to kind of simulate how it would do, like, just in a normal save. And then there's one league in which Napoli is the worst team, has the lowest average current ability for their squad. So just to kind of give you a taste of, like, how your tactic would do against big teams, against little teams, against mid-table teams, and against, like, just in a field of a spread out, like, stratified league structure. So I think it's really good. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from it. The Discord has over 800 people in it, which is kind of insane. I did not expect it to, especially late in the cycle, to be so popular, but it's really taken off.
Yeah, I mean, tactics are one of the key things in the community, aren't they? They always seem to do well, and there's definitely an element of people who just love creating tactics themselves. So I can definitely see why. I will also say links to Styc and the Discord and stuff like that will be down in the description below. So do you want to tell the guys how my initial first draft of the one centre-back tactic got on in your tester, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah. So I have it on the screen. You can see, like, in the tester, this is the same tactic that Hood had up on his screen. And so you can always look at this leaks and focus button to see all of them at once. So it gives us, like, a good breakdown of how it did. So this elite teams league is the one where Napoli is the worst team. So, like, Juve, Atleti, like Real Madrid, Man City, Inter, like, all these, like, giant squads, and you finished 8th in the elite league, which, like, honestly, this 8th place isn't that bad. -14 goal difference is actually pretty okay for, like, a one center back tactic, and there's a big gap between, like, you and Atletico Madrid, and not a very big gap between, like, you and 6th place. So, like, 40 points with, like, a -14 goal difference, it could be a lot worse. And I've seen tactics used in our tester that are a lot worse. So this kind of indicated to me that there is some promise. And I think you might have done better than my version in the Elite League. So that's like something to consider as we're like going through like the different versions. In the Balanced League, finished second, but plus 32 is like a slightly above average result in the Balanced League with 65 points. The point total is usually a little bit less important to me than the goal difference is. Sure. And like I'll investigate like how many goals did it score, how many goals did it concede, and stuff like that. So 65 points in the Balanced League, 58 points mid-table here in the Average League with only 19 goal difference. This is where maybe you start to feel like, okay, this isn't like the best result if it's not like beating up on some of these like mid-table teams. So maybe in the Balanced League, you're feasting on like Lyon and Union Berlin and Augsburg. Like it could be that that's where like a lot of the wins are coming up, is like beating those teams like 11 times or whatever. Right. And then in the Underdog League, you did win the league, but winning the league with 75 points is not a very good result. Like a good tactic in our tester wins the league on like 90 points.
Okay, you have me here. You have me here celebrating for winning the league, and then you're like, that's not very good. So.
Yeah, usually people win the league with 90 points, like over plus 60, plus 80 goal difference kind of thing. So plus 32 is pretty low for a winning goal difference in that league. And so that's where I think the rebuild that I did performs better in the Average and in the Underdog League, and about the same, maybe a little bit better in the Balanced League, but worse in the Elite League. So it's like they're different. They just kind of do different things. It was hard. Like this is a hard tactic to improve. You really set me a difficult task. So
yeah. I mean, I assume that, you know, given the fact that it was a one centre-back tactic, to be perfectly honest. So this is the tactic that I started off with, and then I'll get Stick to break down the changes that he made. We'll have a little discussion about them and go from there. So I had a sweeper keeper on attack, 2 inverted wingbacks on automatic duty, which obviously it's an attacking tactic. So they're gonna try and push forward. We have an anchor sat in front of the back 3, if you will. 2 defensive wingers on either side. The all-important role in this year's FM, I find the CM on attack to really push those runs into the penalty area. The shadow striker again on attack, and then the combo up front of an advanced forward and a deep line forward. Obviously, if you guys want to look at my tactic more, I'll post it in the Discord channel. But then we switch over to Stick's amendments. So Stick, talk the guys through what changes you've made and why.
Sure. Yeah, I've loaded that save here, and some of the things that like concerned me a little bit about your tactic is I thought you were maybe actually spread a little wide. Like those defensive wingers felt risky to me, that like the central channel where like runners can kind of run through and then take advantage of like overloads on that one center back felt like it was too open in the middle. And so I took one of those defensive wingers and then moved them to DM. So that I think is like the biggest change for me in the tactic, is putting that like halfback in that slot next where that defensive winger would have been on the right, and then changing that from an inverted wingback to a fullback to give the space for the halfback to kind of drop into and create like a pseudo back 4 when you're in possession. So, or when you're out of possession and they're attacking. So that was the biggest change, is I didn't want that I didn't want if you rely on the inverted winger to go central, then there's this big wide gap where like there's no one like defending that wide channel, and especially if they get behind the defensive winger, which they will most of the time. And then that inverted wingback has to like charge down that player who goes wide. So then that hole that you thought you were closing off with the inverted wingback isn't closed at all, because they have to go chase the winger. Then someone like a CM from the other team or a shadow striker or something can just hit that gap between where the IWB used to be, and then they're wide open. So I wanted to kind of clog the middle a little bit more. So I moved a defensive winger to halfback. So that was like the first major change. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, you see more often than not the runners through the middle. I think, you know, the change from halfback to anchor, let's say role for role, I personally think they're very similar. Sure. I actually do like the introduction of the roaming playmaker here. What made you go for that as a role rather than a more traditional defensive role?
I wanted the tactic to have a little bit more going forward. which is odd because like you would think with one center back you would have no problem scoring goals, and that is generally true. In the tester, the tactic did score a fair amount of goals, but like I think people have like a negative opinion of the roaming playmaker because the word roaming is in the title, but it's actually, I think, a pretty well defined role. I think it's just like a pivot. Like it does a good job of deciding when to stay on defense and when to go on offense. And like I don't think the Volante does as good a job of that. Like the Volante will get all the way inside the box sometimes when it's not necessary, and then is caught out in transition and like really forces you to play like a DM next to them to like kind of cover for that. But the RPM I don't think ever does that. The RPM is like when it's correct to make it to the edge of the box, they do. When it's not correct, they play like a DLP. So like I see it as like a really ideal pivot. I even love sometimes playing 2 RPMs next to each other, and they kind of then are like this double pivot where one of them will go forward and be more adventurous and the other one won't. They just like they don't roam as much as you would think. Like I think ball winning midfielder roams more than RPM, even though ball winning midfielder has hold position. But they just chase the ball like.
It's the joy of the match engine, right? You've actually prompted me to potentially try that in one of my tactics, because I usually run a box-to-box midfielder, so I'm wondering if I try that, it may work a little better.
Yeah, I had someone in my stream ask for advice on like how to make a 4-2-3-1 work with that's more defensive, and I told them just play 2 DMs and both of them as roaming playmakers. And then he was like, a stream later, he's like, I did, and it was incredible, and it's been amazing. And now I still score goals, and I don't concede as many. And nice. Just like, so roaming playmakers are underutilized, just like inverted wingbacks. I think the average player just doesn't quite know what they do. But that's why I used it.
Interestingly enough, this video will be out after the Super League, so if I implement a roaming playmaker in my tactic and it works, you've only got yourself to blame, and Editor Jack will flash up whether or not that went well for me or not.
Cancelo. Salah.
Nope, he scored. That's onside.
Oh. That was Fabinho there, because he's one of the better ones.
His arms are in the air. It's a goal. So yeah, okay, going forward, you've changed the 2 striker roles, so it was an advanced forward and a DLF. Any particular reason why you've gone for the 2 advanced forwards up there?
I want more space for the CM attack and the Shadow Striker to like advance through their defense, and I feel like the DLF almost like pulls defenders closer to them, like starts dropping deep. I want to push their defenders back, and then that makes more space behind their defenders for those attackers. That's really the only reason why. But like, I do have the advanced forward on the left set to run wide with the ball, stay wider, and take fewer risks. Like those player instructions, I think, are really important because it sort of then does what a deep line forward would do, right? Which is kind of drift a little bit wide as they come back towards the play. It just does that further up the pitch, so it still makes space, but it makes space in 2 ways: by dragging out to the left and by like pinning the defense further back and making sure the defensive line sits deeper.
I like it. I do like the shape. As I said, obviously I did give Stick the thing of you can only have 1 centre back. Don't rip this apart completely and keep the 2 strikers up top. So
well, and I kept your AMC in the same position. Like I wanted to maybe drag it out here as an inside forward, instead of a shadow striker. But
so running this a second time around, how did this one do? You said it did better across the board for the most part, except for maybe the Elite League.
Yeah, let me pull up the leagues in focus. So in the Elite League, 35 points, you had 40 in the Elite League. So, but the goal difference is where the big difference was. I'm at minus 35, you were at minus 14. So even though you beat me by like 4 points, the goal difference maybe indicates that that's not the whole story, that it might have been even worse than this 35 point total would indicate. But in all the other leagues, it outperformed. So in the Balance League, it also finished second to Liverpool, but with 10 or so more points and a plus 48 goal difference. And it only lost 5 times, which is, I think, kind of impressive, and only lost to Liverpool once.
Which is really good for a tactic with 1 centre-back, right?
Yeah. Well, the one thing that is interesting about this tactic that I think a lot of people who use it on the Discord don't do is Liverpool, you can check what tactic they played, right? So we can go to Liverpool's team screen, click on their senior squad, and it'll tell you that they played a 4-3-3. And so then you can almost kind of evaluate, like, oh, what teams did I lose to? What tactics are they playing? Is there a like specific tactic weakness? So we get points off the 4-3-3 used by Liverpool in 3 out of the 4 matches here. So this is like little things that you can do in this testing database to get yourself some more information. I think most people just look at this like top line, easy to like read data. But it did well, and that makes sense, right? When you have one striker, like that's not going to hurt this tactic as much, but how would it do against like a 4-3-1-2 like 𝘼𝙗𝙗𝙪𝙩's tactic? Probably not very good. But the AI doesn't use that all that much, so that's just like, you have to kind of take the good with the bad with testers like this.
Yeah.
But in the average league, it finished second. You were down like mid-table in 5th with a plus 29, which is actually the highest goal difference in the division. So even though it didn't beat Leverkusen for the title, it did have kind of better peripheral stats. So it's maybe the points total has a little bit of variance in it, but the goal difference maybe tells a little bit more of the story. And then in the underdog league, here's where you can kind of see this difference too about what I mean by a good championship and a bad championship in the underdog league. Like I've scored 93 points here in the underdog league with a plus 68 goal difference with the 1 center back. So there is like kind of degrees to the testing.
Yeah, for sure. That is a big difference. For sure. Yeah, so this has been really interesting. I'm going to go away and test this tactic myself and see if this is something that I can whip out during a draft competition, just to really throw people off. Because I think if I come up against someone who is, as you mentioned with Liverpool, running a 4-3-3, I think I could potentially have good fun against a 4-3-3 with this. So
yeah, you could.
So yeah, it all depends. It all depends.
Yeah, the fullback role might be a little bit interesting against that tactic. It might not do quite enough if someone, especially in PvP where they play their wide attacking players are always on an attack role. There's almost no one who doesn't play them on attack, but the AI doesn't do that. The AI is playing support roles way more often in attacking positions, so this fullback's not going to get exposed as much against the AI, but in like a draft tournament, this fullback support might have to go on defend. It's just like, it depends. But I will say too really quick is that like in this tactic, I did play a lot with the PIs. So it's not just role changes. Like you can see all these custom player instructions that I put on like the fullback to like hold position, sit narrow, don't cross, take fewer risks, like dribble less. Like I really want them, gave them as many instructions as I could to stay home, so that if they venture forward, it's like only in the safest of circumstances. So I use player instructions a lot in my tactics to kind of mold things, and I think that can really help people get their tactic doing exactly what they want it to. I like player instructions more than team instructions, personally.
Right. Wow, that's very, very interesting. And I imagine quite eye-opening to a lot of people. I mean, like genuinely, I know several people who would just go in and use the presets and kind of leave things as they are. Whereas obviously you can see shapes like this, and obviously several tactics that Stick has in his arsenal are very, very different, and obviously that's why they work quite nicely against the match engine. So as I said, I'm gonna go and test this one a little bit further, and as I said, maybe come into a draft competition to you very, very soon. But before we go, guys, Stick, do you want to tell everybody where they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel at Stick Piano. You can search on YouTube. The link will be in the description, where I've started testing tactics using this tester and kind of discussing them, and they're all available for download in the Discord, which also is going to be in the description. And then I stream on Twitch 2 or 3 times a week at twitch.tv/stickpiano. So all those links will be in the description. But the YouTube channel's new, and I've really enjoyed doing it and taking a lot from like your videos, especially those tactic testing league videos, and all the like reviews you do of like 𝘼𝙗𝙗's tactics and put them through your tester. They've been like a huge inspiration to me to kind of take this leap and be like, you've got this testing database, you have this new Discord, use it, make new content, and it's been an awesome journey.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, guys, please do go over and show Stick some love and make sure you subscribe to his brand new YouTube channel.